listening to the art movement, and earlier I was talking about the Velvet Revolution, which obviously occurred at a time of Gorbachev and the time of perestroika, aka restructuring, and glasnost, aka openness. So obviously it was facilitated by all of that. But during this time, other former Soviet countries gained independence from what would essentially become Russia. I love the story of the Velvet Revolution, and I wouldn't dare to call myself an expert on just about anything, so I will refrain not only from calling myself an expert on this particular historic moment, but also pretty much anything else. Still, what I have to say is that over the past few days, I have found myself reading more and more about it and digging deeper to discover new things that I did not know about it, and that have come to the fore through the works of contemporary and contemporary-minded researchers. For example, I didn't know the role that environmentalism played in the rise of democracy, essentially, in Czechoslovakia, but apparently the pollution brought about by the factories in the country and the relentless efforts of the Communist Party to not address it worried people so much that they started to band together in their attempts to do something about it. The protests were so big and effective that the communists could not ignore it, and towards the end of the 80s, several of these groups were state-approved, which was a huge victory for a country where such demonstrations were heavily controlled and really encouraged people to stand up for their rights and for a greater and wider representation. One of the groups that caught my eyes and is talked about in the exhibition was formed by mothers, and actually it was called Prague Mothers. They marched through the streets with their prams, they marched through the streets of Prague, and they were really concerned for the future of their children. And then there was also the much more famous Rainbow Movement and so on. And there's a funny motto from the time that is prominently used in the exhibition, which was also used by the environmentalist groups of the time, and reads, "Even communists have to breathe." So perhaps that's also why they were state approved. I mean, there was a general concern for air pollution in Prague at the time. One of the ways in which these groups and other groups that eventually gave rise to democracy in Czechoslovakia were able to garner support was through petitions. So ordinary people would travel far and wide to get people to sign petitions, to the point where the support for the movement could no longer be ignored. There are also stories of, groups that would travel to rural parts of the country to inform people of what was going on in the greater cities, during a time, of course, when official information was still heavily censored. And there were other things that played a great role, including religion, workers' rights, and also popular culture. It is a remarkable story, and I feel it's one that still deeply is felt by the Czech people themselves. I can't really speak for the Slovaks because I have actually never been to Slovakia or the Slovak Republic. I know that there is some friction between the two countries, which seems odd to me. It's kind of sad, however, that the ruling party right now in the Czech Republic is right-wing populist, which seems to rely on tactics that pretty similar to those that had been used by the Communist Party right up to the Velvet Revolution. Babiš is the prime minister, and he was actually a member of the Communist Party all throughout the 80s. And Wikipedia lists him as the second wealthiest man in the country, but wasn't communism supposed to be left-wing and all about the people and the working class? I don't know. It does kind of make you think though, doesn't it?